My name is Nekme Obasogie. Today's topic is very interesting. It's about the history of the Great Benin Kingdom. And then Ohen N Ukoni from the ancient city of Benin is going to tell us the history of why Ohen N Ukoni Neyedo was restricted from entering Benin. You can either call him Ohen N Ukoni Neyedo or Ohen Ewuare. I know that some of you guys are already aware of what happened a few weeks ago when some police officers committed a taboo in the land. What happened was that these officers went to a village called Ewuare to arrest Ohen N Ukoni Neyedo. When we say Ohen N Ukoni Neyedo, we are referring to the priest that never visited Benin. So during the confrontation, the priest told the officers that according to the tradition of the land, he is not supposed to enter Benin. Then the police officers argued profusely that they have the authority to arrest anyone and bring that person to justice in Benin City. And they brought the priest to Benin. Immediately he stepped his feet into Benin, the palace received a sign. According to what I was also told, they said they experienced a severe downpour of rain in Benin that day. It was a kind of a sign that a taboo was actually committed in the land. They have to slaughter 3 dogs in front of the police station before Ohen N Ukoni was released and he went back to his village. This incident shows how the rule of law was actually in conflict with the tradition of the land. If we have to analyze this incident from the perspective of the rule of law, the police officers have the authority to arrest anyone and bring that person to justice in Benin. However, they also have the responsibility of contacting the palace to confirm this story before making such an impulsive decision of arresting the priest and bringing him to Benin. You see, that is why I said the rule of law was actually in conflict with the tradition of the land. It's a kind of a reminder to us that certain tradition of the land should be incorporated or recognized under the constitution. Otherwise, the same story or the same incident will continue to repeat itself over and over again. From the lens of cultural tradition, the Benin people will consider the violation as a taboo in the land, but also symbolic because history tells us that Oba Ewuare Ogidigan I, who ruled the Benin Kingdom during the 1400s, that is more than 500 years ago, made this proclamation to restrict Ohen N Ukoni Neyedo or Ohen Ewuare from entering Benin. And this tradition has never been violated, not until Oba Ewuare Ogidigan II came into power. That is our current Oba of Benin. You see how symbolic this incident is to the history of the Great Benin Kingdom. What a rich culture. I'm so proud of my Benin culture. Oba Atokbe is a long live the king. Anyway, Ohen N Ukoni is going to analyze the actual history of why Ohen N Ukoni Neyedo was restricted from entering Benin. Just listen to him.
This history of about 560 years old has never really been told by historians. Thank God for the job of Dr. Isen Ehagosa for having to record a man on the 12th of July 1992. That man is late, one Ohen Imatitikwa. He was the Ohen Ewuare of Ewuare at the time of interview. He told him the true history of Ewuare. And when a taboo was committed some few days ago in Benin, because Oba Ewuare Neyedo Onalaido, it is a 560 years of unbroken custom that was broken few days ago. And people became curious to know that what really transpired. Why is it that man, that ancient personality, doesn't come to Benin? Then from there, I needed to dig deep, and I was able to meet Dr. Aisene Hagosa, who was able to bring that recorded tape, the interview he had with that man in 1992, and played it to me. From there, I got the full history of Erinosie Nobani Neyedo. The history of Oba Ewuare the First, from what I gathered from that recorded tape, has not fully been recorded. Today, we celebrate a Motan for the role she played during the travail of Prince Ogun, who eventually became Oba Ewuare the First. Today, we celebrate Edo, the land of which Igodomigodo, a person of which Igodomigodo was named after. But today we don't celebrate Ohuahe. Ohuahe was the most remarkable figure in the life of Prince Ogun. He was the most remarkable figure in the life of Oba Ewuare the First. And today, I will prove to every sons and daughters of Benin Kingdom why Ohuahe should now be placed in the podium of great heroes and also a great deity. The Ohuahe deity that we speak about today was not a deity initially. He was a personage whose destiny was intertwined with Oba Ewuare the First. No wonder he had to come back during Oba Ewuare the Second to remind him of his total alliance, his total loyalty to his friend Oba Ewuare. During the travails of Oba Ewuare, after his two elder brothers had passed on, of course, we all know the story of Oba Ohen, who was father of Ogun. Ogun was his stepson. During that travail, Ogun was running from one community to the other for the fear of his life, because the Edo chiefs or the Benin chiefs were after his life, because he was a man that is highly opinionated. He believes so much in his principle. Through all that running from one bush, from one forest to the other, he became a mystic figure. He acquired the ability to command the forces of life and death. One very day, there was a young man called Oba Ewuare, who was a very stubborn young man. His father had refused to even recognize him as his son because he was so stubborn as a child. One day, Prince Ogun eventually became Oba Ewuare, got a feel that there was someone around, probably on his farm clearing. And when he looked around, he did not see that person. So after some time, he now saw a footpath. He followed the footpath and he got to a particular tree and he saw some dense bushes. Because Prince Ogun was a mystic figure, he realized that those dense bushes was not just a natural bush, but rather a human being who turned to. So after some time, the bush cried out loudly that Ogun, fiegbe weregbe, turn around. Then the Prince Ogun turned around, and after which the young bush, the thick, dense bush, turned to a human being. That human being was Ogbede, a very mystic figure. When Prince Ogu accosted him and told him that where is he from, he said he was with his father who was making life unbearable for him. That his father is somewhere not far from where that discussion was going on. And as such, he asked, "Take me to your father." Prince Ogu asked Ogbede to take him to his father. He took him to his father, and Prince Ogun told him that, "Domo, sir, my name is Prince Ogun of Oba no no Oba ite so egbe so pokpa no Edo here." Then he made a request that to the father of Ogbede that he wished that his son be his comrade, one of his comrade, and his father gladly accepted because of the trouble his son has put him through all through his life. Then he allowed him to follow him and told Prince Ogun that Omona ohwame the son is a burden that is likened to an heavy load. Ohwa ohwavihe. So it is not abridged as Ohwahe. That Ohwahe became his nickname. It became what the destiny hold for him. But his original name was Ogbeide. So the young man, now later known as Ohwahe, followed Prince Ogu all through his travels. And before he left, his father gave him Agbawoko, a bag, an ancient bag. Of course, for some of us who are familiar with the Prince Ogun story, he had a bag, a mystic bag, Agbawoko Ogohwae. Oh, sorry, Agbawoko Ogewai. It was a mystic bag, the bag that gives whatever he asked for. So it was that bag that further helped these two young, aspiring Oba and an aspiring deity. So in all through the travels, they fought mystic figures in thick forest. They fought great personalities. One of which the history remembers of the Prince Ogun's travel with a tree that had worms in his back, the tree lamented of the pain he was going through. Now, what historians failed to record was that during that life of Prince Ogun, of him picking those worms for the tree, and the tree giving him one of the most potent power ever recorded in the history of Benin, Ewabe no hu noma or unoma. That ase that the tree gave to Prince Ogun, Ohwae was there when it happened. It was not just only Prince Ogun that was in that scenario, like other historians have narrated. Ohwae was actually with Prince Ogun when that matter happened. But I cannot go through of the tree having a lot of worms and crying all through the night that whoever can remove this worm from my back, I'm going to bless him. I know that Wish of Wire and Prince Ogun eventually removed those worms, and there was a particular one that was still remaining that did not remove. And the tree also cried that whoever that he is happy that someone has removed those worms from his body. But however, there's still remaining one in which Prince Ogun eventually also removed, and the tree now gifted him that real mystic figure, that real mystic material or a totem that Prince Ogun eventually used in course of its victorious reign. Then it was during that travail that Prince Ogun, discovering that young Ohuaye was a blessing to him, that he told him, he made a vow to Ohuaye that Igarioba Vedo, Igavi Mawoba Vedo. Translated as this: if I become the Oba of Benin, I will also make you an Oba in Benin. It was a promise that Ewai made, Prince Ogun made to Ewai in their travails. The promise he eventually kept though, but not without the history which I will narrate. Longer on, they eventually found themselves around Ikbema area of Uselu, where the story of the python and the leopard happened, where that place is still there. It was deified. Ewaya actually made that forest area deified. It's deified, and a big shrine is there till date. All right. Then it was at that point where Ohuaye had to tell Ohuaye had to tell the young Prince Ogun that we have done all that we have done for you, because during their travail, Ohuaye also recruited other military men like Ogun Nehua, who came from Irua in present-day Esan, eventually became one of the disciples of Ohuaye. Ake Nisi also became one of the disciples of Ohuaye. Ovauto Nigiduma also became one of the disciples of Ohuaye. These were all called Ihe. They were not witches or wizards. They were greater than witches and wizards. They are called deities of the Edo land. They eventually became deities of Edo land, of which Ohuaye was their chairman, as the historian narrated, was their overlord, and was not Prince Ogun. After which they told him that they had watched the stars and the celestial bodies clearly, and it is time for him to return back to Benin to become the Oba of Benin. But he should not forget them when he eventually becomes the Oba of Benin. So Prince Ogun eventually stepped into Benin, and some passers-by eventually saw him and said that we have been looking for you, and it is time for you to come become the Oba of Benin. Eventually, we all know that that's when the Immortal and the Edo story happened. I don't want to go through. That would have been Ewai, Prince Ogun's story. So it was during that time he was actually now made the Oba of Benin. After he became the Oba of Benin, for 3 good years, he did not remember the good things of Ohuaye and his soldiers, the role that they played during the time of travails. So Ohuaye became very angry one day, and he assembled his military might, his Ihe, his called Ihe. We call it Ihe, or deities, because they all eventually became deified. It was during this time that they all came to Benin to visit Ewai, to remind him that he promised that when he when he becomes the Oba of Benin, that he must carry them along. Eventually they came. When Ewuare heard that the Ewuares are coming to Benin, he was shocked, because he knew how glorious and mighty these ones his foot soldiers are. He accepted that they should come. Of course, he opened a very strong banquet for them. He was very happy to receive them. Then, in a quest to annihilate them from the surface of the earth, because he could not visualize sharing his authority with these strong ancient figures, the strong men, he resolved to burn them alive. However, he did not succeed, because these guys were mystical figures. Oba Ewuare Neyedo was able to open the ground for the other Ohen to follow through. It was Ake Akenisi, who wanted to follow through the door, got a little bit burnt. Then why? All right, casted a very huge cobwebs, so as the litigation of the fire should not get to his own side of the burning house. Eventually, they all came out unhurt, and Ewuare was devastated with the betrayal from his friend, who was now the Oba. But however, the Oba was able to pacify him, and was able to tell him that he had felt that they were going to be a stumbling block to his reign. So, as a very good comrade and foot soldier of Oba Ewuare the First, he allowed the matter die. Instead, he had told Oba Ewuare that Ake was injured and Ake should be well treated. Ake was eventually, they built a house close to Ewa Road when you are about to ascend the Oba slope, where Ake's wound was nurtured because it became blighted in skin. That Ake eventually became a deity, of which there are 14 shrines in Benin, where Ake deity is being propitiated in the Benin land till date. All right, so after which Oba Ewuare told Ewuare that it is time for him to come back to within the metropolitan Benin, because he has assignment for him. Ewuare eventually came down to and came to situate at the present day Ikpokpa area of Moritala Mohammed Way, when you're coming from First East Circular Road, around where the Ikpokpa has terminated at the present day Sapele Road. That's where the vicinity of Ewuare. Now, Ewuare became an astute farmer at Ikpe. That is why in Benin, almost in the history of the story or the narration of Ewuare, you must always mention Ikpe, because that was where he played almost most part of his life, was surrounded by that ancient community, Ikpe. Edunaya Ikpita Emini Ikpe Ewuare Omagie Ohen. Translated, what Ikpe means to Ewuare, Edo people cannot fathom, because Ikpe featured almost in all life endeavors of Ewuare in his later years. Oba Ewuare invited Ewuare one of the day down to the palace and told him that he has made Benin so great. He has converted Benin from a town to a city. That he has met with all the celestial figures. He has met with those who makes the world ticks, both physical and spiritual, and he has defeated them all. But he wished to invite God Almighty that is Osanudazi, Osanobua, down to Benin to see the magnificence of the city, that he wished that Ewuare should embark on that journey. Ewuare told Oba Ewuare, I am your sir, not hearing me. Nobody has ever gone to heaven and returned back. He said, but Nyagayo, I will go and I will come back. Of course. Ewuare embarked on that journey with his comrade Ogun and Ohen, followed him. But he remembered that his other comrade Akenisi should also embark on that journey because he doesn't trust him with his wife. The wife of that Ewuare was called Irewu. The Benins remember him to be Irewu, was a wife of Ewuare. But in present, for those Ake worshippers, you cannot pray to Ake and not pray to Irewu, because eventually Ake stole the wife of his master, Irewu, and got married to her. Alright, so obviously the story lingers on, and then Ake was able to meander his way, was supposed to follow his master down to heaven. He was able to meander his way and ran back to the house, woo Ewuare's wife, and stole her. They both eloped down to Isi area of the present day Uhun there. Then eventually Ewuare and Ogun were the two figures that eventually embarked on the journey to the spiritual world. The story goes further and said that they got to the spiritual world and they met Abigilemi and they were able to fight them off. But Ewuare was told that when you address God in heaven, your 2 feet, your leg must not touch the ground, but you must kneel down. And the heavenly name that was given to Ewuare was Idalu. That was what he was called when he got to heaven. The heavenly, the Tenegrins of the heaven had referred to him as Idalu. I think that name should be researched upon what it actually means, but that was the name he was given when he got to the spiritual realm. So that very day, when he was to address God, this could be reality, this could be mythology. However it is, they said the Benins highly believed it happened. So of course, he went. When he got to the presence of God, he shook his hand inside his Agbawoku and instead brought out 2 big tortoises, which he kneeled upon. Then he brought 2 big snails, which the other 2 foot was placed upon. So eventually he was able to solve the puzzle of having to kneel down and not touch the floor, because he was kneeling on the 2 tortoises and his 2 other toes was placed on the shells of the snail. So he was able to convince God to come to the city of Ewuare, his master, his Oba, his king. All right, God Almighty, as the myth goes or the story goes, God agreed to come to Benin to come and see that city. But when God was descending, he first descended at Agbo, and of course, it first descended at Agbon, which they now called Agbo till date, before he further transversed to the city of Ewuare. Now, he was expecting God to pass through Ikbe, so he was waiting for Ikbe. When God came, he met with Oba Ewuare, and Oba Ewuare had long conversation. So he now requested, where is the brave man that came to call me from our board? They said he was already at Ikbe waiting for him. So they went some errands, some of the Umadas were sent to fetch Ewuare from Ikbe. Alright, so he eventually came, and as he was coming, the God was about ascending. So, and he told God that you cannot ascend to heaven without giving a gift of real magnificent potency to his lord, the Oba of Benin. And he said, and the God asked him, what do you want from me? And he said, that totem that you are holding is what I request from God. And God eventually obliged him and gave that totem. That totem is now called Edote Isemerigo. Isemerigo. It is a totem that every Oba uses in sealing any agreed upon oath, covenant, conversation. What it means is just like the Great Seal of the British, that it's just the same, that when you agree, it's just like the gavel, the legislative gavel, that after an agreement, a law has been passed, you hit it. That is the function of Isemerigo. I'm sure some of the Benins, they know what that Isemerigo means. If you see some of the artworks, you see the Oba holding the Isemerigo. All right, I will not be able to show you people what the Semerigo means, but some of those who are curious can chat me up and I can send you pictures of the Semerigo. Now that is Semerigo. He's different from Ase Eware na Unonwa or Unonwa that the tree gave to Eware. So Eware was given in his lifetime, was given two potent totem. The one given to him by the tree and the one given to him by God Almighty, like the God in heaven, or Sanudazi. So then, after God obliged him with that totem, he gave the totem to Eware to give to Oba Eware. He insisted, Eware insisted that no, he still would not let him live until he obliged him with three things. He has three demands. Demand number one, he doesn't want rain to fall during the daytime, just the nights. The second one, I can't really remember the second one, but the third one was to grant his Lord, the Oba Eware, the spirit of immortality, the gift of immortality. Well, that one is another long story. I don't want to delve into that. Eventually, God wanted to grant Oba Eware the spirit of immortality, but something happened. He could not. He did not pass that test. He did not pass that test. All right. That's why the gift of immortality was not granted upon him. So after all that saga had happened, God came. Then as God was about ascending, he grabbed the chain at which he was climbing back to heaven. That is the mythological discussions. So Eware pulled down three strings of that chain. So when you go to the Eware's shrine in Ewokoi to date, you see that to the original three chains that Eware pulled from the long chain that God was using to ascend back to heaven still remains there, and it is longer now, because since Oba Eware was the 13th Oba, and when you add 27 more Oba, that therefore means that you have 27 strands of chains has been added to the original three. So when an incoming Oba comes, a chain in 3 locks will be added. When another incoming Oba comes, a chain of 3 till date at the Eware shrine at Ewokoi. Still being practiced today because of Eware pulling down the last 3 shrines. Eventually, God ascended into heaven and left. Then the test of immortality came, which I had said earlier. I don't want to go through it. That's another story of its own. All right. Oba Eware did not pass that test, so the gift of immortality was not granted. But every other 2 requests that he made was quite impossible, because God had to explain to him that this is the reason why there is day, this is the reason why there is night, this is the reason why your request cannot pass, but I can't grant your master the gift of immortality. This was the tremendous role Eware played for Prince Ogun as a prince, and after he became the Oba. Don't forget that Eware was always with him in the expansion of his of the then Benin Kingdom to Benin Empire. It was always with him. Ewuare was the most trusted general, both spiritual and physical, of Ewuare, who never for one day betrayed his master. So Ewuare woke up one morning and asked that they should go and call Ewuare, and Ewuare, as usual, was already at Ikbe. Of course, he was always at Ikbe. So when he came and he told him that, I remembered when I was a prince, I made a promise to you that as I am Oba, you also be Oba. Because Oba Ewuare realized that the word Oba, king, is very heavy. And he said that I'm going to share the burden of the Oba to every sons and daughters of this land, including you. Your own is special because I had promised you. So it was during Oba Ewuare the first, we started in his bid to share that bondage, that heaviness of kingship amongst all the Benin people. That is where you start saying Oba Ewuare, that's Oba Ewuare, Oba Ravan, Oba Van, Obota, Obewahu, So that's where these words came in a bid Obioba, Ohuoba. That's when he shared all these responsibilities. He wanted people to also feel the intensity, the heaviness of being a king. Eventually, he told Ewuare that there are 4 ancient routes to Benin. In these 4 ancient routes, I wish you hold one of those routes, becomes your domain. He said, but however, we will test this 4 ancient route with charm to really know which should be highly fortified, which in the future a great wall is going to come from. And if a great wall is going to come from any of these 4 ancient routes to Benin, you must hold fort in this ancient route. So they went to Uselu, they tested the charm there. The charm on our Lomi, dance around and discover that they are not going. In the future, there's not going to be great wall coming from. They tested the Kenwan area and they tested the Sokmomba area. Now, when they now got to Ikpobahi River, they discovered that a great wall will come in the future through the Ikpoba slope. I presume that eventually became the Benin Ida War. And he told them that the charm that we have displayed here today has shown that something huge is going to come from here. Now, from this Ikpoba slope down, it's your region. That is Wogio Bage Kemakba Ari Kinoriri se Imuwe Wanuaba Numekina Bao Udena Vedeno Quave Lairi. And of course, it was a covenant of which the Semirego sealed that on no account, because he's an Oba, he has made him an Oba. Nege miao, Oba Igwobadia. That sort of a thing. So that he should move further from that place and establish whatever he want to establish at that region, but never on record, on historical record, should he cross the slope down to Benin. Eventually, Ewuare thanked him and transversed. He got to, the first community he got to was Anye. When he got to Anye, a lot of persons are aware of Anye community. Coincidentally, before I heard about the story of this Anye, I was in Anye community just last week. So when I was listening to the story just yesterday here, and I heard of Anye, I was like, I was in that community just a week ago, and I was like, what does this community ever? I've never heard of it. And now, just today again, I heard of the community that it was the first community when Ewuare left Benin. He got though. So he wanted to turn to a river, he could not. Then he now looked up front and saw a woman. And he now said, okay, a woman was spying on him. So that's why he could not turn to a river. So he now planted an healing tree and planted and put some pots and all that. That shrine I was told that it's still there, and that shrine is called Ihiahian. Then after which it transversed from Anye to Aho. When it got to Aho, there was a woman who had pots of water lined up. So he begged the woman, Sama menwo, give me water, let me drink. The woman refused and said that there was no water. So when the woman left, he looked into the pot and he saw there was so much water. Then angrily he left. And when the woman later returned to fetch water from the pot, he discovered that all the pots were now empty of water. When he got to the boundary of Aho, he brought out his magical bag and brought out a tool which he pointed towards Aho. He now said, Kedene nakba unhamame Ohen yagbaho. I heard that community, they're having a lot of water problem. I don't know, maybe because of the curse that Ewuare placed on that community for denying him of drinking water. Just like the parable of the woman who fetched water for Jesus Christ. And this one, in this case, this one denying him. Just like Jesus Christ was denied before a woman was giving him water. I think that's the same case that happened to Ewuare. He was also denied, and he placed a curse that from this day forward, that community will suffer water. Said after he passed through that community, now got to a community called Igweka. After Igweka, he now got to Iduenha. I think is it Duanga or Uduahai? Iduahai. Iduahai. That was when he got there, he met a man who was the head of that community. The man took him in, and after which the man left. Then, one way or the other, he felt unsatisfied with his journey of Ewuare and planted a shrine. And planted a sort of all the shams he had. He placed it at the Ukoni, the kitchen of the man's house. All right, he placed all the shams he had and he placed it inside the Ukoni because the house he was staying could not house it. There was no space. So he placed all the charms, the pots, every of the spiritual implements that he had was placed inside the Ukoni. Now, after which he left with the wife, the senior wife of the man who helped him. And of course, during that time, he slept with the woman. And whether forcefully, I wasn't there, so I can't tell what really happened. But history remember he slept with a woman. And after the sexual intercourse, and I told him that from henceforth, Owen, that his son will be born from that sexual intercourse. The woman was already very old, maybe 85 or 90. She never thought she can give birth again. That the son, when the son grows up, that should tell him that he will become a very strong deity. That nege yawe miava, it's abolished from the worshippers of the deity that his son will become. So that is, he should not have sexual intercourse during the daytime. Of course, it's still abolished in the worshippers of Ewuare and the worshippers of Ake till date. Okay, and he told the woman that when the son is born, that Nori Ukonini, that where he placed those shams, that there's a magical pot that he must carry water every Ekenaka, every day of Eken, to pray for the young boy, because he will become a very great figure. So, and he now told the woman that when you eventually born the son, the name will be Iyadome. Iyadome. Iyadomwen. Iyadome will be the name of the son. Then eventually he moved further down a bit from that Iduenha, and he planted 2 hikimi tree, and eventually turned into a big river, which we now call the Ewuare River till date. When the woman returned back to the house, he had told the husband that Ewuare had forcefully slept with her. And in anger, the husband sent some of Igbama, some of the youth in the community, to go and arrest him and bring him back. On getting there, they discovered that Ewuare has turned into a mighty river. So after some months, eventually the woman took in, she was pregnant and eventually gave birth to a son. And that son, of course, the father already told her that the name of my son will be called Iyadome. Then, however, the woman also named that son Ose. The reason was because everything that the man of Wai told her came to pass. So the woman had named the son Ose. Not long enough, of course, the power of the son, of the young son, was from Ukoni, where the charm was placed. No wonder it was one of his names is Ohen N Ukoni, because the charm that edifies the young boy Iyadome was placed inside Ukoni by his father Ewuare. So the mother died not long after that. He was still very young, and it was a stepmother that took care of the young boy, and the stepmother's name was Ikoyi. So after which, because the power of the young boy kept increasing every single day, so in a way to guide the young boy from harming the people of that community, he moved them further. He moved them further a bit to a place that was not established, and eventually that community became where Ikoyi. That is where the Ewuare headquarter is being propitiated today. So because of that, the young Iyadome became the first Oba Neyedo, because his father was not alive to take that crown or to take that name of Oba Neyedo. All right, whether you call it Ohen N Ukoni, Oba Neyedo, or Ohen N Ukoni, is the same personality. So of course, we now know why he cannot travel to Benin. He cannot cross that Ikpoba slope. So of course, there is a festival done every year that starts from Ewokoi and terminates at Ikpe, the Ewuare festival. The Benin's call it Ikpoleki. So that festival, I heard, is still being practiced till date. All right, of all Ewuare disciples and worshippers and all the Ohen Ewuare in different communities. But the headquarter, it's Ewokoi, and the Ohen there is the overlord of all the Ohens of other Ewuare in other communities. Now, this is a story that should be shared. This is a story that should be told. Ewuare is such a great figure. I respect him so much, and it is a story every Benin man must tell, that Ewuare is not just a deity. It was a personage who became a deity for his outstanding personality, for all the things he did for the Benin land and his lord, Oba Ewuare the First. I'm sure that some people are already saying that, why is it that it was Ewuare that boundary was demarcated, and why is it that it is during Ewuare that boundary was also broken? Is it a main coincidence or just history trying to reoccur? One cannot tell the mysteries of the Edo land, the mysteries of what God used in establishing this unrivaled, this unequaled kingdom. And funnily, this Ohen Ewuare is not the only ancient personality that is forbidden to enter Benin. There are other two ancient personalities. For now, I can't share all the stories, but I hope that we now know that Ewuare is a great man. I'm sure Association of Great Benin Descendants is going to look into the celebration of this great man We are not looking at him as a deity. This man is not fire. He's a personality and should be celebrated. For today, the Yoruba celebrates Moremi. Moremi is a deity. But first, Moremi was a personality. That is my historical perspective. Owa is not just a deity, was a personage that played the most dramatic role, the most inspiring role during Oba Ewuare. And I can authoritatively say that if Oba Ewuare had not met the young Ogbe, who eventually became Oba, who eventually became Ewuare, I'm sure that the story of Ewuare won't have been as great as it is today. So Ewuare's destiny was tied around what Ewuare eventually become. And because of that, he should be celebrated. And don't forget that Oba of Benin City remains the greatest king on planet Earth. And Egbe Ewuare Agi Obase.
My name is Nekbe Obasogie. I'm here to discuss about Oba Ewuare Ogidigan II. I know that some of you guys are already aware of what happened a few weeks ago when some police officers forcibly arrested Ohen N Ukoni Neyedo, a priest, and brought him to Benin, of which this priest is prohibited from entering Benin. It was a decree that was made during the reign of Oba Ewuare Ogidigan I, who ruled the Benin Kingdom during the 1400s. Right now, the Oba of Benin has sent a list of materials to the police officers that are needed to perform sacrifice. It's a kind of a cleansing the land from the taboo that was done to the Benin culture. And the police officers are responsible of taking care of the list. Yeah, the list is not very exhaustive. I saw 14 native cows, tortoise, goats, and other materials. Because the cultural tradition of the land should be respected, no matter how complex the rule of law is. The cultural tradition has been in existence for centuries before the rule of law came into play. We should be cognizant of this because the rule of law is something that was introduced to our culture by the colonial people. I'm not saying that the rule of law is not effective. I live in Canada, whereby the rule of law is very, very effective in this part of the world. The cultural tradition of our land and the rule of law are both important in terms of community policing. For instance, when Oba Ewuare Ogidigan II came into power in 2016, after a few months, he made a proclamation to eradicate the so-called CDA, Community Development Association, that was causing a kind of a menace in the state for years. Right now in Edo State, we are living in peace. Is that not important? As the indigenes of the Great Benin Kingdom, it is our responsibility to be the primary custodians of our culture. We have a very rich culture. We should not allow our culture to diminish just because of this trend of globalization or modernization. We have a very rich culture. Anyway, I'm going to stop here. I will play a video for you guys. It's about Oba Ewuare Ogidigan II, his proclamations, and also a police officer made a comment. Just listen to this.
So, Ogidigan we have today may not have conquered towns and villages, but he has conquered minds. He has conquered governments. He has done things. From the day of his coronation, October 20th, 2016, he made proclamation that became law.
What is the law now?
That from that day, the issue of Community Development Association menace
in Edo
State is wiped out. And I tell you right now that other states in Nigeria are queuing behind Edo State on the issue of CDAs. The CDA that became a menace, according to His Majesty Oba Ewuare II, CDA, Community Development Association, as an association, was not wrong. But those chairman CDA, secretary CDA, they now turned it into youth association to oppress the elders of the villages. When people go to buy land, whether for agricultural purposes, for buildings or whatever, they no longer go to the elders. They have to discuss with the youth. So immediately he has quenched that.
So the youth were, possessing a form of power.
They arrogated powers that were not their own to themselves.
Just imagine.
So, like we say in Benin, it is the gathering of elders that you refer to, not gathering of chicks and chicken. The Oba of Benin is not just an Oba. He's a God representative on earth. Oba Nusaya Ziyegbe Yagbon. That is what he is. And Ewuare II has proved it beyond all things.
Yeah, we can see that. We can see that with the proclamation. Even the recent one was like a rainbow after the rain in the Benin Kingdom. That's what I call it. I call it a rainbow.
A rainbow
after the rain. Yeah.
That's
like
true.
It brought peace to the Benin Kingdom.
Peace. Look at the issue of the CDA. Whoever comes out now to nobody, no chairman now. Former chairman, they call themselves. If you even call them chairman, you say I'm not a chairman. Oh. Everyone has put himself in the proper perspective, proper position. Look at the issue of illegal migration. Yes, a few people will still be stubborn, but they can no longer do it in Benin. They can still take some of our Benin girls. They take them to Imo. They take them to Anambra. They take them to Abuja. They take them to different places to take them away. But they forget that everywhere that was Benin Kingdom, Benin Empire, under the Emperor Ewuare I, not damn way.
Now that His Royal Majesty has placed a curse on those that will perpetrate oath taking, then of course our job is half done, because we'll be able to do our cases very well, we'll be able to rescue victims, and the incidents of human trafficking will be greatly minimized.